There we go. All right. So I've only been talking for 7 minutes and there's no damn sound. All right. Technical issues abound. All right. So it'll be in the post edit.
There's no sound.
There is sound now. So, getting back to what I was saying about the sponsor of this channel. It is the merch store. So go get your merch. Lots of new... Hold on a second. I turned it on. It was muted. It's good to go now. There's a 1 minute delay. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you for your text, though. I appreciate it. I'm glad you caught it.
I didn't catch it. Somebody else did. I just saw his comments.
Oh.
So I went and checked.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Guru. Back to the store. All right, so stupid people are like glow sticks. You just want to snap them and shake them till the light comes on. We've got liberty or death. We've got, of course, girls just want to have guns, which came up in a different video. Everybody thought it was a grand idea. Of course, me being me, I raced to throw it out there. So there it is if you want it. And when tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. All right? So, as I was saying about this, the ATF and Connecticut State Police, SLFU, are holding a seminar. It is local here in Meriden, which baffles my mind. I have no idea why they're doing it in Meriden, but they are. I am not an FFL. I will not be there. I do know some FFLs. Hopefully they'll be there. And we'll be good to go. We'll get some information on it, all right? But lots of stuff coming up. Right there, the seminar is in Meriden. Right there. So, if you're coming to this, all right, they're going to be covering 4473s and more stuff like that. If you are coming to it, make sure you bring a bulletproof jacket. All right, getting to this one. This is an older story. We're kind of coming back to it. The Supreme Court, a couple of weeks ago, kind of punted everything back to the lower courts. So they didn't want to rule on it. So what happened was all these cases from Illinois and Maryland, they had put in emergency requests that the Supreme Court just picks these cases up and just rules on them. Let it be the end of it. And Justice Thomas, Alito, and all them said, no, we don't want to step on anybody's toes. This is still going through the Court of Appeals. So we're just going to kick it back down there with instructions on make sure when you come up with your ruling, you are using Bruin and all of the other cases that we pretty much have just ruled on. Well, of course, they're going to pass the buck, which we had talked about in a previous video. Then this came up. A federal court of appeals court has upheld Maryland's ban on assault-style weapons. This just came out a couple of days ago. So, as you can see, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that these guns aren't protected. That's pretty much it. All right, they're talking about sweeping gun control measures. The Firearms Policy Coalition is the ones that kind of push this forward. And when we get down here, let me just get to it. All right, the laws was argued that it's unconstitutional because such weapons are already in common use, so on and so forth. All right, and they accept, the Second Amendment is not a second-class right. Dissenting judges were in favor of creating a near absolute Second Amendment. But basically, the Fourth Circuit declared the ban of the 27 ruling as okay. All right, they basically said AR-15s are not covered under the Second Amendment, which is BS. So this case is now going to go to the Supreme Court, okay? So they're going to appeal it and take it up to the Supreme Court. So that's where that is. Thank God, finally the Supreme Court is being forced to take one of these cases so they can finally just lay down the law for the entire country and not have like Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Maryland, California, and all these states having certain guns illegal, and then other states have it legal because, if you're down in, living in Wyoming and you own these, you're perfectly fine. But then you get a new job and you have to move to Connecticut. Now all of a sudden, all the guns can't come with you because you can't bring them into the state because they are not compliant and they are illegal. So you have to either leave them behind, sell them, whatever. It's a real pain in the butt. I hear all the time from people like, I'm moving to Connecticut. I have this, that. I'm like, stop. Don't move to Connecticut. And they're like, well, we really don't have a choice. I'm like, well, then you can't bring your guns with you. So that's just that. So hopefully this will get to the Supreme Court. On the flip side, this case right here, which just came out of another court of appeals, this one is for let me see. Oh, this is still Maryland. So it says right here, with respect for the consideration of the benefits of Bruin, we now uphold the judgment below. The assault weapons at issue fall outside of the ambient protection offered by the Second Amendment because, in essence, they are a military-style weapon designed for sustained combat operations and are ill-suited for basically self-defense. Now, behind me, which I can't touch these on the live, you have an SBR, which is the AR-style platform, and they're saying that's a weapon of war. Well, you know what else is technically a weapon of war? The one right next to it. That's a weapon of war from the American Revolution. Farmers, civilians, businessmen, and the Minutemen, the Continental Army, and the British Army for that matter, all had that rifle. Now that is a smoothbore flintlock. It is not extremely accurate, but it is a 54 caliber. That's a pretty decent size hole. Well, the other one is chambered in 5.56, and we all know that's just a 22. So I hate when they use this whole weapon of war. When they compare this gun, like, well, this gun isn't protected by the Second Amendment because it's a weapon of war. And I say this all the time. Well, you know what else is a weapon of war? Benelli M4s, Mossberg 500s, Glock 19s, Glock 17s, the SIG P320, the P226, and I can just keep going. The VP9, the VP45 from H&K. There's tons and tons of guns the military uses in war that we civilians also have because they go hand in hand. So using that criteria like, well, it's a weapon of war, makes really no sense to me. It's an absolute farce. I think they just don't like the gun because it's popular, it's effective, and it looks scary. That's the big thing. Now, when they're like, well, it's the preferred firearm of the mass shooter when it comes to these mass shootings, that's also BS. If you get into the statistics about it, the preferred firearm for mass shootings is always a handgun. It's small, concealable, etc. All right? So, moving away from this opinion, this is the Maryland opinion, we're going to be moving into the District Court of Appeals for New Jersey. Now, why am I bringing up New Jersey? Well, New Jersey, and this is a ruling they just had, and it's going to take a while to scroll. I am just going to jump ahead to 68, which is at the bottom. All right. Now, when they go over to the constitutionality of the LCM, the large capacity magazine, they kind of just punt on that one. They didn't want to address it. All right. But right here, for New Jersey, the AR-15 provision of assault firearms is unconstitutional under Bruin and Heller. The Colt AR-15 is used for self-defense within the home. All right. The Third Circuit decision whether the LCM's amendments, it basically says LCMs don't matter. The large capacity magazines, they didn't want to touch it. But they're talking about Colt AR-15s are perfectly legal, and it's unconstitutional to ban them. So you have the Fourth Circuit that says, no, you can ban them. And then you have the Third Circuit that says, you can't ban them, right? So one says you can, one says you can't. It's about time the Supreme Court just lays it all out for us. Just make a ruling. They're either creating laws where these are banned, totally unconstitutional, or states have the ability to levy restrictions on this particular platform. Okay, now when it comes to the New Jersey ruling, you notice they specifically say right here, Colt AR-15. They are not saying all AR-15 style. They are saying the Colt AR-15. So people are now questioning, does this cover everything or just that? Because it does not cover AK-47s, AR-10s, or anything else like that. It specifically looks like it's saying only AR-15s. So unless you have a stamped Colt AR-15, then it sounds like it still might be restricted. So I don't know if this is a very limited scope ruling on only the Colt, but God knows. All right. So that came out of New Jersey. It's like these Court of Appeals, they can't make up their mind. Now, how does this affect us here in Connecticut? That's simple. We have Grant v. Lamont. Now, this right here is denying the plaintiff's motion for a temporary restraining order. This was to stop the implementation of HB 6667 and that assault weapons ban. All right, but the overall arching court case that is currently up at the Second Circuit is right here. This is Grant v. Lamont. Now, I did a video on this already, giving everybody an update. Nobody knows anything. It's in limbo right now. Whether it's Atkinson, Fishbein, CCDL, Eddie, nobody knows what's going on. It's just in limbo. So all I do know is with Maryland's upholding of the ban, and it's going to the Supreme Court. Once the Supreme Court makes a ruling, all these other cases just go away. They just, because you don't need them. They just all get dropped. So all the Illinois cases, gone. Doesn't matter where they are. They just evaporate because you don't need them. Grant v. Lamont, gone. Right? It's just boom. Once you get that one ruling, it covers all states. Now, we do know that that is not a cure-all, because when the Supreme Court has come out with rulings as of recently dealing with New York and their shenanigans when it comes to their permits and guns and this and that, New York just ignores it. They're like, we're going to pass it anyways. Even though parts of it are already struck down via other cases, New York's like, we're just going to pass it. And then people are going to sue, and we got to fight our way through the courts until it makes it again to the Supreme Court, where it will be struck down. But we can get a good 4 or 5, maybe 6 years or more enforcing this law that is clearly unconstitutional, and people have nothing they can do about it. You just have to live under the thumb of the government. So once the Supreme Court makes a ruling, it'll be nice that all of these will go away, and hopefully it'll open up the market again for regular carbines and rifles within the state of Connecticut. So whether it covers SBRs and all that, I don't know, because SBRs are NFA items. I'm just going off of regular ARs that are not regulated like that. So anything with like a 20-inch barrel, or basically over 16, so it's non-NFA, will probably become legal until Connecticut decides that they're going to ignore the law and do something else. So, speaking of Connecticut, I don't know if you've seen this, but the Elm City has been dealing with an increase in shootings. You don't say. Ever since I've lived here, and I grew up here and left for the military, and I've come back since. Um, Everybody knew New Haven, Hartford, Bridgeport, and I can just keep naming cities off, are just riddled with crime. So for them to come out and say New Haven is now dealing with an increase in shootings, duh. Okay, a lot of people when they go to New Haven, they end up down by Yale. Yale is a nice-ish area. It's kept clean, just because it's Yale, especially if you're on campus. It's when you get away from Yale and you get more into the bowels of New York or New Haven, it just starts to fall apart, right? I mean, it's just dirty. I hate going to New Haven. I just avoid it like the bubonic plague, all right? So, police and city officials are addressing during a news conference in New Haven on Thursday, this just past Thursday, to discuss recent arrests. Officials said that over the past 12 days, 16 people have been wounded by gunfire. So I ask, Lamont, Governor Lamont, you've said crime's down in Connecticut. This doesn't sound like it. You said passing these new gun laws would make people safer. It doesn't sound like it is. It sounds like your new gun laws only hurt us, the actual law-abiding citizen, and criminals still do criminal stuff. Mayor Justin Elliker and the police chief, Carl Jacobson, said it's due to the summer that more people are out and about and they're causing problems. That is probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Well, of course it's because the weather's nice outside. You don't see riots go on in the middle of winter. It's too cold, right? They're fair weather rioters. Same with crime. Nobody's going out trying to do these stupid ass crimes, in the middle of like a blizzard. So when it's warm out, yeah, people have nothing better to do, you get crime. So there's that. Gun crime is going up. Crime all around is going up. If you haven't noticed that, it's right here. Burglars are targeting Connecticut gun stores as cops and feds try to track the thieves and the missing weapons. This is an older story. This is back in May. This is the first time this place was broken into. You can see where they smashed a window with a rock. Okay, it's old news. And then, of course, 2 months later, they got hit again. But this time, they yeeted a car into the building. Just because they couldn't break the glass. All right? It's a problem. There's gangs out of Waterbury that are going around hitting all of these gun stores, these FFLs. All right? So it's regular gun stores. And, of course, it's like pawn shops and things like that. And what they're doing is they're getting, these gangs are hiring, young kids that are minors, under the age of 18 per se, and have them go do the crimes because, you know what, if they're caught, they're minors, it's a slap on the wrist, boom. They need to prosecute them at the state level, local level, as adults, and of course federal charges. Now, recently, I've done a few videos where I've talked about numerous FFLs that have been broken into. Most FFLs keep it quiet. They don't want to talk about it. And this is on the advice of their legal teams. Just don't address it. Okay, that doesn't affect me. When I know about it, I'm going to address it. I know here in Meriden, just a couple of weeks ago, somebody found a pink sky pistol just out in the road. Just laying there. I have it on good authority that was a stolen gun from another FFL that happened a couple of months back, and this gun is now just cast aside. I mean, it is a pink sky, so it is garbage, but to each their own. All right, it's a smash and grab. With the recent break-ins here, I'm not sure, I don't know. I think if you were to go to Waterbury's police blotter and take a look, they might have arrested a couple of people that had something to do with this. But I know in Waterbury, 18-year-olds were charged with stealing 21 guns from a Salem store. And this is a little bit older. This is back in the end of July. But two 18-year-olds were charged with stealing guns and committing 2 carjackings. And they give their names. Stole over 21 guns from statewide pawn shop in Salem. Now, how many of you knew statewide had been broken into prior to me showing you this article? Because they don't talk about it, like I said. All right, police have only recovered 8 of the stolen firearms. The 2 adults could face over 70 years in prison. It's going to get pled down. That's just the way it is. They're going to plea it down, drop some of these charges. That's just the way it works. I hate to say it, but it empowers these criminals to just keep doing it. You know, you got to go in and break up these gangs. But they don't have a stomach for it. The DAs and the prosecutors, they just don't want to do it. Soft on a crime and all, right? Because honestly, I think if they start prosecuting people to the fullest extent of the law under all these, it drives the numbers up when it comes to gun crimes and all the stats like that. And I think that affects how much money the state gets from the federal government. I could be wrong, but I do know that's what schools do when it comes to bullying and sexual assaults. That's why they like to sweep things under the rug, because it does affect the bottom line at the end of the year when their little reports go out. They're like, oh, well, you suspended a bunch of kids for bullying. You know, you're not going to get that much money. So they just try and sweep all of that under the rug. That's not what they're going to tell you, but that's what they're doing. Just like when you ask the state, do you have a gun registry? They'll tell you no. And they do. I showed it to you. So there you go. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that. I want to know out there for you guys, do you think crime is going down in Connecticut? It doesn't feel like it. It feels like it's getting worse. It feels like these soft touch policies are making it worse for us. Just people trying to go about our daily business. That's me, though. I'm not sure. I don't know. All that comes into play because we're talking about all the problems with gun crime, which feeds into the narrative they're currently using for gun control. All right. Now, I looked for it. I couldn't find it, but during a news conference, they did ask Trump if he felt different about guns and gun control after literally being shot out and almost assassinated. And he basically said, no. I don't think Trump is the greatest when it comes to the Second Amendment. I have my beefs to pick with him, like the banning of the bump stock, but I personally think he was just getting really bad advice from really bad people. He just hired the wrong people. And you know what's funny is, you know, one of the organization that's supposed to be pro 2A led the way on banning that bump stock was the NRA. They're like, yeah, ban those bump stock. They're stupid. So FUD Central, the NRA, sometimes doesn't have your back. They support some of these gun control measures, just so you know. Now, I am a member. I have to be a member. I'm an NRA instructor, and if I'm not a member, I don't keep my instructing credentials through the NRA. So, yes, I pay the money to keep my credentials going. I know what you're going to say, I'm a sellout, but I'm also a SAFE instructor, USCCA instructor, across the board, and a bunch of others. That being said, for me to teach Utah, Massachusetts, and some other states, they don't accept SAFE, USCCA. They only accept the NRA. It is literally like the gold standard. Ergo, we must maintain our credentials so we can teach these. All right, let's get into what Kamala Harris says. She vows to send police door to door to confiscate firearms from law-abiding Americans. I think that's a little hyperbolic. What did she say? She did say that if within the first 100 days Congress did not act, she would act via executive order. And this includes universal background checks, red flag laws, and of course, an assault weapons ban. Because that's what they're going after. So the Supreme Court really does need to get off their rear ends, hear the case, make a ruling, and hand it down before it gets too dystopian out there. All right, I'm going to play this for you. I hope it works. All right, here we go.
Senator, I'm curious though, because not one candidate who has very similar plans to what you have when it comes to guns never really seems to talk about the process of perhaps banning certain guns. Does it involve law enforcement essentially going to people's houses looking for specific banned guns? Does it involve perhaps creating a database of people who are legal gun owners? I mean, what kind of process are we talking about here?
Well, first of all, as a point of distinction, I believe I'm the only one who has said that she will take executive action. So mine is not just a plan with some plan for legislation. I'm actually prepared to take executive action to put in place rules that improve this situation. I also have, as part of my background and experience, working on this issue when I was Attorney General. And we put resources into allowing law enforcement to actually knock on the doors of people who were on two lists. A list where they had been found by a court to be a danger to themselves and others, and were on a list where they were precluded and prohibited from owning a gun because of a conviction that prohibited that ownership. And those lists were combined, and then we sent law enforcement out to take those guns. Because, listen, we have to deal with this on all levels. But we have to do this with a sense of urgency, and we have to act. Enough with the talk. And again, I really have to stress, lawful gun ownership, that is one thing. We're talking about something else.
So what they're talking about is, we're going to ban ARs and guns like it, and then we're just going to come get them. Now, how? How are they going to know? Well, when you buy these guns, you fill out a 4473. Here in Connecticut, you fill out your DPS-3, so the state knows what you got. Remember, that DPS-3 goes to SLFU, local PD, stays at the FFL, and you get a copy. Okay. Remember, the ATF, I did this in a previous video, has over 1 billion 4473s in their records. Now, it's a non-searchable database according to the ATF, and you have to go through everything by hand. However, I don't think that's how it works, since that numbnut that took a pop shot at Trump, from the time they ran the serial number, they said, here's the rifle, here's the serial number, to when they identified everything was 30 minutes. That sounds like it's a searchable database to me. Just saying. All right, so Kamala Harris touts freedom to live safe from gun violence in her presidential campaign. So this is the whole premise they're going with. All right, she is the presumptive Democratic nominee. She already stated that she wants to have red flag laws, allow courts to order a temporary seizure of firearms from a person that presents a danger. I personally don't think it's going to be temporary. I think it's going to be more of a permanent thing, and you're going to have to fight to get them back, and it's going to take years, so most people are just going to either not have the money or they're just going to give up. Okay? It's all part of the plan. I'm just saying. They're coming after your stuff. They admit it. All right? This is not going to go well for us. Okay? And latest polls have her up, and I don't really trust the polls all that much for either one, because people can just say they're going to vote this way and just they don't show up. So all I know is, if she's elected, be prepared. They're coming after your stuff. The NRA is trying to backtrack and cover their own ass when it comes to supporting gun restrictions. The NRA talks about Kamala Harris desperately running from her anti-Second Amendment. No, she's not. She's not running from it. She is hitting it full force because they want to take the guns away. So, just again, get ready. It's coming. It's coming. Now, how about her running mate? How does he feel about it? How does Tim Walz feel about it? Right? Because he's a gun owner. He's like literally, if you look at him in his hunting outfit and the meme of a FUD, they look the same. I'm just saying. I saw that in one of the subreddits. I thought it was hilarious. But here's Tim when he's well, we're not even getting into the stolen valor stuff. Here you go. Ready?
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
All right, so let's break that down and let's unpack that.
Early, Kaylee McEnany now joins us in studio, and good morning.
Shush. So, CDC studies. Center of Disease Control should not be dealing with guns. They're just going to declare it a medical emergency, which they can use that to ban things. It's just more alphabet agencies up in your business. When he talks about he carried it in war, one, military does not use AR-15s. They just don't. That is strictly a civilian rifle. So he's full of it. They're trying to backtrack. They said he misspoke when he said he used a weapon of war. He didn't misspeak. He knew what he was saying. He's placating to the base, and they want to do a gun grab. And that's what we're looking at. This is a total sham. But it's coming. I mean, they're both on the same page. They both want to grab your guns. That's it. So, if they're elected, God help you. God help me. They're coming for all your guns. They're not going to make it easier. All right. Now, jumping into this subject. All right, and this is not fear-mongering. It's just read the tea leaves. And this is just stuff that most people don't catch. I think it's funny. Because not only did Tim Walz, the VP candidate for Kamala Harris, come out and say, hey, Second Amendment is basically, we can confiscate these guns and do this, that, and the other thing. He's also been recorded giving interviews saying that the First Amendment is not all-powerful. As in, you can restrict the freedom of speech, right? You can curtail disinformation, things that are hurtful, things that just don't feel good. All right. I think a lot of people would lose their collective minds over that one. But then again, maybe not, because just 4 years ago, social media companies, United States government, and all of the media was censoring everybody when it came to them talking about COVID, vaccines, alternate vaccines, things like that. I don't want to say too much because I don't want the algorithm to go all haywire and nuke me. But they were censoring us, all right? And they said, hey, your First Amendment is not absolute, which, hey, Waltz just said that again. So, where do we get to see our future? Well, it's simple. As you can see by the screen right here, this is over in the UK. And if you haven't been paying attention to what's going on in the UK, it's pretty insane. The entire country is pretty much just erupted in a civil war. It is maddening. People are protesting in the street, other factions are protesting, and then they're just fighting. The funny thing, though, is the police the constables, are rounding up and arresting British citizens and not the Muslims or any of the refugees that might have come into the country. They're okay. They can protest. They can run around with knives. They can stab people, and the police aren't doing anything. However, if you are a proper Englishman or English lady, and you tweet something mean, you retweet something that could be portrayed as offensive, well, you're going to jail. Right here, take a look at this. This is from Twitter. It's Mr. Guns and Gear. Here we go. Take a look at it.
Okay, so
What do you mean I can't have any alcohol?
okay, well I'll tell you. Okay, the time's 20 to 3, 14:40. I'm arresting you on suspicion of improper use of the Electronic Communications Network under
What?
127 of the Communications Act, okay? So you do not have to say that may harm the defence if you don't mention one question subject to later on in court. Anything you do say may be given evidence. Do you understand that?
So I'm actually being
You're
arrested?
going to be arrested, okay?
Right,
So you
and-
got to the police station.
Right.
Ask you, okay, this is in relation to some comments that you've made on a Facebook page.
Right there. Making comments on a Facebook page. All right? And I don't know if you caught it, but when she was reading him his rights, if he doesn't say anything, it could hurt his defense. Now, obviously in the States we have Miranda rights where anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to remain silent. Here they're saying if you stay silent, it'll hurt your defense. But if you say anything, we can use it against you.
Oh, really? Oh, it's a Facebook crime, is it?
Okay.
Right.
So we need to ask you some questions about that.
Right.
Have you got anything in your pockets?
I've got my keys. No, that's about it, I think. Keys.
So, anyone who's been arrested, we can search them under Section 32 Peace and Criminal Act.
Right.
That's for dangerous items.
Hey, I mean, you said I was going to be arrested under some what? Information? I'm going to be arrested for posting on Facebook.
Some comments that are offensive, obscene, and people have made a complaint about that, and it's
Can you tell me what this comment was?
Okay, well we'll do that when we interview.
Alright, and so what am I going to be locked up for the night or?
Hopefully not.
Right, do I need to take my medications with me?
Yes, we will look at taking all of those.
When do you need to take them?
All right, we're not going to get into when he needs to take his medication and all that, but a comment that somebody found offensive, and now he's getting arrested. How about that? I know what you're thinking. Thank God we live in America, where you can put some really dumbass comments in those videos or on Facebook or Instagram or what have you, and yeah, you might get a little tit for tat from the content creator, which just happened on this channel. Somebody was talking about how it's stupid to fight for your gun rights, and he hopes that the government takes all the guns away, this, that, and the other thing. You know, and I came back with that's a pretty, crappy attitude to have. And of course, other people started commenting on it saying, that person's a bonehead, and, it wouldn't bode well for the government or for the police department and all that, because a lot of people would, be up in arms. I'm like, yeah, that's a good way to get a civil war pretty darn quick. And I was rebutted with, you and your little toy guns wouldn't stand a chance against the United States government because they have planes and bigger weapons. And I'm like, I've heard that before. Joe Biden said that. And then I reminded this individual, and I don't know who it is, I don't think he's a follower, that Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and there's a bunch of others, are inferior nations when it comes to technological marvels, unlike our military. And yet, they still gave us a run for our money. They still kicked our rear ends all over the map sometimes, because our technology just could not keep up with their guerrilla tactics. So it's not about all the F-15s and all the F-16 you have. Sometimes it just comes down to guerrilla warfare. And, you know, it happens. If any of you served overseas, you know what it's like. I mean, it was like fighting the Flintstones, but they were really good at hiding in caves and doing the ambushes, and all the technology just sometimes didn't help. So, just saying. But, getting back to this, it sounds pretty bad. And then, you come to this Yahoo. This is England police. This is like their commissioner, their the head cop, talking about he wants to extradite and imprison Americans over social media posts. Social media posts that you make here that they find offensive or incite violence or is disinformation. They want you to get arrested via our police departments, our federal agents, so on and so forth, and be extradited to them to face charges. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but here, don't take my word for it. Here's their words.
We will throw the full force of the law at people. And whether you're in this country committing crimes on the streets or committing crimes from further afield online, we will come after you.
Talk to me about that, because we have seen some high-profile figures whipping up the hatred. You talked about it in there with the officers, in fact, about this being added to by online commentary. I mean, I'm even thinking of the likes of Elon Musk getting involved. What are you considering when it comes to dealing with people who are whipping up this kind of behaviour from behind a keyboard, maybe in a different country?
Being a keyboard warrior does not make you safe from the law. You can be guilty of offences of incitement, of stirring up racial hatred. There are numerous terrorist offences regarding the sort of publishing of material. All of those offences are in play if people are provoking hatred and violence on the streets, and we will come after those individuals just as we will physically confront on the streets the thugs and the obs who are causing the problems for communities.
So there you go. I mean, he basically said he's coming after you. All right. Now, I think it's all hyperbolic. I don't think our government would even stand for it. They have no jurisdiction here. But you can see there's a slippery slope going on here. They are curtailing your rights. They're talking about taking away some rights. They're talking about obviously taking away the Second Amendment right, confiscating your guns, sending cops door to door, etc., etc. You can see the justice system's all out of whack, with one Circuit Court of Appeals saying, yes, you can have AR-15s. Another one saying, no, you can't. We can ban them. Even though they're all making the same rulings on the same Supreme Court cases. It's just a madhouse. Like, nobody's on the same page. That being said, the upcoming election is really, really going to kind of either right the ship or we're just going to sink. And I'm not saying either side is going to be perfect. You know, you could vote third party, whatever. I don't care who you vote for. Just go out and vote. That being said, though, be smart about it. Because some people are going to, when you make that vote, you're literally voting for them to take away your stuff. I don't think any of them are perfect, but some are a lot worse than others. I'm just saying. Vote with your conscience. Pay attention. A lot of people aren't paying attention, and that's the problem. So all these things come about, and all these things get said, and then they get buried because the mainstream media is not going to cover them. So you have to look to your independent sources. And I don't know who you pay attention to, whether it's like OAN, if you watch Timcast, if you watch We Are Change, or one of the tons of others independent media out there. But I personally try to stay away from the mainstream. They've been caught lying to us way too many times, and I think they've burned every bridge they had with me trusting anything to say, and it doesn't matter which mainstream media it is. So that's me. So all right, getting away from the UK BS, I had posted this photo a couple of days ago, and it's funny because it's gone. Now, I didn't take it down. The Army took it down because they were getting so much trash talked about them. So you may know a couple of weeks back, maybe a couple of months, time is all off, the Navy released a photo of like the captain of the ship shooting in like an M16 stuff, doing like rifle quals. And everybody was losing their mind because the optic was mounted backwards. Like how it ever got out of the armory, I have no idea. How the skipper could even see through the optic with the LPVO flipped, I have no idea. I don't know if it was just for show, but the optics were bad. No pun intended. Everybody was making fun of the Navy, and the Navy scrubbed it. They just got rid of that photo. Then the Army released this one a couple of days ago. Same thing happened. And I went and saw it on, when I looked for it on my Facebook, the photo was just gone. So I had to dig around and find this photo. It was for the marksmanship badge in Fort Jackson. When you take a look at it, it's all kinds of bad. All right. Now, granted, enlisted generally don't carry handguns. It's usually for the officers. Regular grunts on the ground, enlisted guys, right? E4 Mafia, etc. They get their carbine, and that's about it. They've got their fighting rifle, and that's all. Very rarely do you see them with handguns. So I don't expect them to be expert marksmen with handguns. However, it's like they're not even trying. It's like the cadre didn't teach them anything. So, just in case you didn't get to see the photo, we're going to start with this individual right up here. You can see that he's teacupping that poor little M18, which that's the military version of a P320. Okay, one, it's tan and it has a manual safety, while the civilian P320 is black with no manual safety on it. So there you go. All right, but the teacupping. Oh, I hate when people teacup the gun. That's poor hand's not doing anything. Then you got this guy who right back here, look at that, crossing his thumbs. Man, it's a good thing that thumb is so low, because if it was any higher, like up here, that'd be some nasty slide bite. Gonna come take a chunk of that knuckle. All right, then you got this guy. Right here, look at that grip. Oh, it's atrocious. Thumbs are all tucked in. It's like they don't know what they're doing. And people were giving them crap for it. So they scrubbed the internet. They got rid of that photo. I just thought it was funny. You know, Army strong and all. Because, you know, they're soldiers. They're supposed to be the fighting force of America. And you do this and it looks like a bunch of DEI hires. It's not the military that I had joined way back in the 90s. This, God help us. All right, enough making fun of the Army. Okay, this just happened literally 4 days ago, in case you did not hear about it. So, forever and a day, getting a permit in the state of New York, if you're a New York resident, was hard. They won a Supreme Court case over it. So they were issuing permits to residents. However, getting a non-resident permit was near impossible. You had to prove so many reasons why you need the gun, this, that, and the other thing. Well, as you can see here, NYPD on 8/6 has an emergency rule. The emergency rule regards issuance of concealed carry permits that has made several updates to the way it operates. All right, key takeaways. Non-residents of New York may apply for their to the NYPD, even if they have no ties to the city, such as employment or concealed carry permit. So originally, you needed to have some sort of tie to the city. You couldn't just get one so you could traverse the state and just keep your gun on you. All right. Well, that just got, and this isn't like a big court case or anything. This is just NYPD just coming out, right? It's the foundation for a safer New York. If the permit is issued, the license will abide by the rules and laws within the city of New York with aspect to carrying a concealed handgun. I wouldn't go to New York. You couldn't pay me enough to go to New York at this point. All right. You may not have been convicted of an assault in the 3rd degree, menacing, or misdemeanor DWI within the last 5 years, date of this application. Fair enough. Non-residents must complete an 18-hour training to be issued the permit. You can book your 18-hour training course here. 18 hours. Connecticut only requires an 8-hour course. Now, if you teach the NRA course properly, or the USCCA course properly, it is about 8 hours between classroom time, Q&A, breaks, going over all the safety rules, taking the test, live fire, all of that is about 8 hours. All right, now you're going to find some places out there where they're like, we do the whole class in 4 hours. You can't do that. The state of Connecticut says you got to do it within 8 hours. So I'd be careful going to those places. 18 hours of what? What the hell are they teaching? Oh my God. If you're out there in the YouTube lands and you know anything about this 18-hour curriculum, you got to send it to me. I got to see what this is. I want to know how you stretch out the safety class for 18 freaking hours. That is just insane. But hey, some of you out there may want your non-resident New York permit. So if you live the western side of Connecticut and you go into New York, whether it's into the city or maybe upstate New York, you want to have your guns with you, you may have to bite the bullet and do this 18-hour course. You're going to have to let me know how it goes, because I don't think I could do that. 18 hours that's a lot. that is, man. I mean, think about it. 2 days at 8 hours a day, that's only 16 hours. This is more than that. That's a lot. I don't know what they're covering. I mean, there's only so much to cover. But whatever. It's a thing, though. I wanted to show it to you. Let you know. If anybody needs this particular link, just throw it in the comments. Shoot me an email. Whatever you need to do. And I can provide this link for you. I think it's kind of insane. 18 freaking hours. I hate traveling through New York. And it sucks because you can't do anything about it. I mean, it goes from Canada to the ocean. So you have to get out of New England, you have to go through New York. Okay? I just like to drive everywhere because I can take my stuff with me. I hate airports. Everyone's like, oh, you're scared to fly? No, I don't have a problem flying. Hell, I love jumping out of planes. My problem is I hate sitting in an airport, being beholden to the whims of others and have no control. I can't just get up and walk away to go do what I want. I'm just stuck in this little area and I can't move because the airport has said I can't, right? You can't just wander off and go outside to get some fresh air or whatever. I mean, you got to stay by your gate. And of course, God forbid you're hungry, or you might want to have a libation or something. You're paying an arm and a leg. And if you have like this 5 or 6 hour layover and you're like, man, my blood sugar's dropping, I need to eat, you're going to pay like $50 freaking dollars for just a burger. And there's nothing you can do about it because you have no options. It's what they've got for you. I'm not a big fan of that. I prefer driving everywhere. But moral of the story is you got to go through New York. So you stop in Connecticut, last rest stop. Unload your gun, lock it up in the appropriate containers, put it into a part of your vehicle that is safe, like your trunk. But remember, most cars don't have trunks because it's got to be non-accessible from the passenger compartment. All right? And that's what the law says when it defines trunk. So if the back seat flips down and you get into the trunk, technically, that's not a trunk. Toolbox in the truck, or some sort of locked maintenance box that's in the bed of their truck is fine. If you drive an SUV, you're really SOL because there is no trunk and there is really nowhere for you to store that gun properly that is not accessible from the passenger compartment. But you do what you gotta do. You drive through the state. Get to the other end where you have reciprocity and move on. All right? And that's the other thing I have a problem with because I have a Utah permit and I have Connecticut permit. I've got a couple of permits. Tim Walsh talked about in that video, he wants to get rid of reciprocity with other states. Like, you have your Connecticut permit, it's only good in Connecticut. You could not go to another state to go shoot in a competition or do anything because nobody would have reciprocity with anybody else. That's I'm not going to say the bad words I want to say, but I personally want national reciprocity. If I'm able to drive in all 50 states off my driver's license from Connecticut and in, of course, all territories and things like that America owns, then, and I'm safe to operate a vehicle, well, I should be good to go to carry my gun. I have, done the courses. I'm a permit holder. I should be able to carry in all 50 states. And of course, DC, which is not a state, it's just DC. They don't want to do that. So, and that's why I don't like to fly. Because of New York. And I'll explain why. So, you got to imagine this. And I just explained this in my class. You leave Connecticut, you leave Bradley, and you fly. I don't care where you're going. You could be Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, Idaho, Indiana, doesn't matter. On the way back, storm hits, a good old nor'easter, nice blizzard. They shut Bradley down. You get diverted to LaGuardia or JFK. You are flying with firearms. So how does that play out? Well, it's simple. The TSA has to guard your guns, right? They have custody of them. The TSA does not want to sit on your firearms until the weather clears up and you're able to fly back to Bradley. They're going to try and pass your guns off to you. They're like, listen, we can't hold on to these. We don't want them. Here you go. Now, you're thinking, well, I'll just take custody of them. Maybe go rent a car and I can drive back. Or I'll just hold on to them and then I'll check them back in when I get ready to leave. No, that's not how it works. New York State Troopers will literally be standing by. And as soon as the TSA signs your guns back over to you, you are now in possession of firearms illegally in the state of New York because you do not have a permit and you're not a permit holder. And God forbid it's something that's just straight up illegal in New York. You're getting arrested right there on the spot. I know what you're thinking. That's insane. They don't do it. They do it. There are horror stories from it. Today's class, I had somebody that just moved from New York, and he goes, yeah, they do that. So at that point, you're like, well, I'm stuck at the airport. I can't go anywhere. TSA, I can't take my gun. You get to babysit it. And now everybody's miserable. So I just prefer to drive. That's me. Especially if I'm taking guns with me. Because if I'm heading back and the weather looks crappy, I can stop before I reach New York. Somewhere where I have reciprocity, wait for the storm to blow over, and then continue on my merry way. I'm not stuck in an airport. That's me, though. That's just me. Some of you might feel different. But speaking of driving, all right, I'm going to talk about a few more things, and then we're going to go into, I'll see if there's comments and answering questions and things like that. I am heading to Goals midweek. I'm going to be driving down to Tennessee. Now, it says here that Goals is August 17th to the 18th. It is true, Saturday and Sunday. However, I have to be down there early because they have a media range day on Thursday. So all the influencers, media personalities that are going to be there are getting together at a range. Brownells and some of the other sponsors are providing all the ammunition and the firearms for us to play with. Hopefully there's some good stuff. And it's just a big get-together and having a blast. If you're interested in doing something like this, going here, you're not going to make it to the range day, but if you want to go to goals, it's actually free for all GOA members. And if you're not a GOA member and you want to drive down there, because it's only like a 14-hour drive, then maybe 15 hours. It really depends how fast you're going. You can register and go to. I doubt many of you can make it, but if you don't get to go to SHOT Show, which is usually just for dealers, things like that, because it's more of a dealer show. Of course, there's media there and all that. Then this one's open to everybody. All right. It's hosted by Brownells, and oh, look who's going to be there. Some local or something local on the local face. Some other media personalities. Okay, so there's a lot more going. So this is just some of the content creators that are going to be there. So you can see John Lovell, Brandon Herrera, Jared, who escaped Massachusetts and is now living in Tennessee. They are also giving some talks that hopefully I'll be able to attend. And a bunch of other people that I follow or I watch on YouTube. Obviously, I'm in the and more category. So I thought it was pretty cool that I was accepted as part of the influencer crowd. So that's what I'll be doing. If you guys can't make it, then look forward to some videos, because I'll be recording a bunch of stuff down there. Hopefully I can get some footage of hanging out with these guys, talking with them, and things like that. I'll give you guys a, brief rundown of what's going on. Definitely got to meet with a couple of booths while I'm there, and guys like from Fight Light SCR. They make basically the only legal AR-ish gun that you guys can buy in Connecticut that's got a removable magazine and things like that. Go meet up with them. I don't know. Just, business. Talk, mingle, get my steps in, all that good stuff. So hopefully we can get some good footage and have a grand old time. All right. Now, before I go too far, I want to plug this. Lock and Load, episode 26, discussing Connecticut two-way issues with Republican Senate candidate Matt Corey. All right? Right there. Matt Corey. So who is Matt Corey? Well, on Tuesday, in case you didn't know, we have a primary here in Connecticut. And Matt Corey is one of the individuals. There's two Republicans, so you got to pick one. But they're running against Chris Murphy. And coming from someone who knows Chris Murphy personally, I dealt with him a lot at a certain period in my life. Chris Murphy's a tool. He doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about your rights. He cares about power. It's time for him to go. So if you're interested, go give the Lock and Load podcast a little look. Subscribe to the channel. All right? Help Josh out. And of course, I just wanted to end with this. New gun laws to combat violence. This is in Colorado. And people are losing their minds. Just bear with me. It's Colorado. People are losing their minds because they passed a whole bunch of bills. Basically, they implemented a bunch of laws that we already have here in Connecticut. But people in Colorado are losing their minds over it. Why haven't the people in Connecticut lost their minds over it? Maybe because there's just no appetite for the people here. I don't know. Couldn't tell you. So, let me see if I can find the chat. I'm not seeing anything. Pull out my handy dandy. So, normally I see the chat feed on my screen. I'm not seeing anything, which is odd. So, it literally says no chats. I'm pulling up my phone, and I'll go from there. All right, so yes, the beginning of the video there was no sound. I forgot to click something on my end via OBS, so that was fixed. Right, good to go now. After this video is fully uploaded, I will go back into the back end of YouTube and cut all that crap out at the beginning, so it just picks back up. So if you need to refer back to the video for anything, all that in the beginning is pretty much gonna be gone. All right. Let's see. Lloyd Alexander Carter, yes. Didn't Judge Sotomayor say that they're in common usage? Yes. Yes, she did. In her dissent, she said the ARs are in common use. So they're going to use that against them. And that's a good thing. Let's see. Broke Dollar. Saw you today. I wanted to say thank you for all that you did. Busy. Rude. Oh, you were signing in at the range. Oh, well, thank you. I was not there alone. I had 13 students with me, and we're going to go do live fire. So that's how I spend my Saturdays and Sundays, usually. I'm teaching at Lock and Load in Southington, and try to have a fun class. Everybody had fun today, for sure. They had some real good shooters. Some other people needed a little extra coaching. But everybody in the end was happy, super excited, and definitely getting their permits. So I always love talking to people. I always joke. If people hear it in class, I'm like, I hate people. It's not true. I love people. I just hate stupid people. And I love when people are in there and they're learning. They're stepping out of their comfort zone. And I've had a few students. I had a couple today that were really nervous. They were shaking like a leaf. It's okay. I'll talk you through it. And you know what? They have fun. They're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I'm like, exactly. Chewing Bubblegum says, hell no to Harris. Tampon Tim. You know, the Tampon Tim is just, it doesn't work for me. And if you guys don't understand where that comes from, he wanted to provide free tampons to the school districts. And I'm like, well, that's good. Sure. Caveat was that I had to go in the boys' room. So I'm like, that's not good. He's as woke as they get. Let's see. Walls is already too old to be a viable VP. Yeah, Bubblegum says 1984. Yes, you are currently... There's like a diagram that shows like 1984, Brave New World, Animal Farm, Fahrenheit 451, like all these dystopian books I read when I was in middle school and high school, and we're going back to the 90s. They've pretty much all just smashed together, and you are living it today, right now. It is not good for me. It is not good for you. And we need to step up to the plate and undo everything that's been done. We need to vote in the people that are going to help dismantle the bloated government that is ruining our lives and ruling our lives. This is what they do for guns when they declare it's a health threat. Yes, that's why they want to declare it a health threat, because then they can impose more rules and regulations and all that. I mean, listen, I do think there's some people out there that are very, very sick, and they can be cured if we just introduce them to lettucillin. You know? Like those little diddlers and just whatever. Chomo gives a body cavity search. Let's see. Lloyd Alexander Cardi probably put on a list like Tulsi. Yeah, I find that trippy that Tulsi Gabbard is on a terrorist watch list. And, listen, I'm probably on a list. I'm probably on several lists. Just because I like to run my mouth on videos like this for everybody. Let's see. Rights are not tradition. Says, the way the censor comments at the end of the chat, you can blame them for it. Wrong think, correct. Wrong think, yep. There are a lot of foreign police working in the U.S. Yes, there are. In fact, there was a massive Chinese police force in New York that had just recently been dismantled. They were sent over here to enforce basically CCP laws and rules on citizens of this country that had families there. And how did they do that, right? How did they enforce their will on American citizens? Well, it's simply these American citizens here had family there. And if they didn't comply here, they went after their families there. And that's how they did it. So people complied. Luckily, they dismantled everything, as far as we know. Let's see. Rights are not tradition. Have you ever seen a cop's salary? I did get to see, because it made the headlines, one of the Meriden cop's salaries. I think he was pushing close to like 300,000 last year. OT is amazing, I guess. Chewing Bubblegum says American citizens should not have weapons of war when the government intends raging war against the citizenry. Laughing. Yeah, pretty much. Let's see. 2A traps are serious business. They will agitate you, attack you, and do it with immunity. There is a lot of money floating around, and they want it. Yep. For sure. I mean, it doesn't even have to be 2A traps. I mean, look at the Gretchen Whitmore thing they just had during COVID, right? There was a big conspiracy to kidnap her, okay? And the conspirators were 16 of them. 14 of them were FBI agents, or they worked for the FBI as, like, informants. There were only 2 idiots that they were trying to rope-a-dope into this by egging them on and providing them the means and materials they would need to go through with this. And then they bust them, and those 2 were arrested. And listen, it got thrown out of the courts because you can't arrest 2 idiots via entrapment. Of course, then there's a lot of chatter that I've seen online about the federal government currently, whether with the Secret Service and all that, not coming forth and actually giving us a proper narrative when it came to July 13th and how that all played out. And it's like trickling out here and there, and none of the stories are making sense. Depending on how you looked at it, it literally looks like an inside job. Like maybe somebody egged this kid on, and they're trying to goad him into something, maybe to bust him. Maybe he went rogue on him, and he jumped the gun, and took matters into his own hands. You never know. And you can't tell me the federal government doesn't do this. They do it all the time. They just don't admit it till years later. I mean, like, you want to go down a rabbit hole, just look up MK Ultra and all that stuff. It's insane. It's insane what our government does. You look at other governments out there, and you're like, I can't believe what they do to their people. And you think America doesn't do that to you? They do it every day. They're just better at hiding it. Yeah, the government will break your leg and sell you a crutch. For sure. So someone sent me an email. Kufsky. I'm sure I'm slaughtering that. I'll take a look at it when I get a chance. Chewing Bubblegum, YouTube blocking comments. That doesn't surprise me. It doesn't. I'm like this big. YouTube channel that's this big. And they still play games. Shadow ban, and I can see that on the back end of my stuff. Like, a video will be doing really great, and all of a sudden, it tanks, it just drops off, and I'm like, I don't understand why. I'm tired of being censored. Free speech is no longer a thing. Hasn't been a thing. It's been like that for years because of disinformation. And when you speak out, they use everything they can to rake you over the coals. They will lambaste you in the media. They make you look stupid, make you out to be a liar. I mean, look at when Joe Rogan had COVID and his doctor prescribed a bunch of things, including ivermectin. The media literally photoshopped an image of him to make him look gray and icky and super sick. And it was okay. People bought into it. They're like, oh my God, what? They made it sound like he went to like PetSmart and picked up horse dewormer, which ivermectin is used for that. But it's also a Nobel Prize winning drug and has helped millions, if not billions, of people to recover from river blindness. So it's a real thing. They use it in Africa all the time. June Bubblegum, will SCOTUS finally rule on ARs? God, I hope so. I already talked about that. But sometimes I just feel like they just don't want to answer it, and they just kind of kick the bucket down the road a little more. And the problem is, Alito, Justice Thomas, and all them, they are not young. They are not spring chickens. And they've been, rumors of them wanting to retire. And if they retire now, then obviously Jello Brain gets to put in 2 new justices. And if they wait, and God forbid Harris and Walz are in the office, then they get to put them in. The Supreme Court is going to be ruined for generations. They're even floating ideas, Biden was, of introducing term limits for justices. So like every presidency, they'd be able to swap out 2 justices, packing the Supreme Court by adding more justices over the 9 that they have, and a few other things. Luckily, though, he legally can't do that unilaterally through executive order. Congress can't even do it. Literally, it's got to be an amendment to the Constitution. So you either need a convention of states or the overwhelming majority of Congress and the Senate to amend the Constitution. Thank God, separation of powers. Because if Biden could do it on his own, he would. Joe Wilkinson, let's get rid of Blumenthal and Murphy. I concur. I don't like Blumenthal. He lied about his military service, and he's just a prick. You're super rich, my guy. Go live your best life. Do something else. What are you getting out of being a senator for Connecticut? What is it? Some sort of power trip? Bro, leave. You do nothing for us. As in the state, right? Because remember, Murphy and Blumenthal don't represent you as a person. The citizenry is represented by Congress, right? That's why we have our Congress people, right? I think ours is Joanna Hayes. Never see her, never hear anything about her. She doesn't do shit. She just comes around with her hand out every time it's time for re-election. Blumenthal and Murphy are supposed to represent the state itself. So when Congress is coming up with some sort of law or whatever they're trying to do, the Congress people listen to us, the people. Okay, so the masses want whatever it is, Congress will pass it. Then the Senate will get it. And they're going to look at it and say, how does this benefit my state? If it doesn't benefit the state, why do it? Why pass it? It doesn't benefit. So literally there's things that they want to pass. If it doesn't benefit Connecticut as a state, then Blumenthal and Murphy should not be voting for it. But it's a good old boy club, and they don't care about you or the state of Connecticut, and they're just going to run roughshod because they care about their own power, and that's it. So someone threw a test in there. Yep, words are in the dictionary. Chewing bubblegum expresses his love for Lamont. I concur. Oath and bond, code and statute. I didn't know what civics was until I was in my 30s. So listen, rights are not tradition. Do you think that's an accident? Learning about civics? It's by design. Now, I am older, okay? I'm not that freaking old, but I'm older. And I remember a time where we learned about these things. But we're going back to the 80s, to the early 90s. Fast forward to today. The only reason my kids learned any of this type of stuff, because we discussed it in the house. We openly talked about politics. I wanted my children to grow up informed. I not only said, hey, this is why this is who I'm voting for, but I explained why I'm voting for whatever that person is, what they stand for. Do the research. And now, both my children are of voting age, because they're adults. And they may not pay as much attention as they should, but when they call me or they ask me, they're like, hey, Dad, we got an election coming up. Who should I vote for? I'm like, I don't know. You vote for who you want. Do your research. And they're like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, obviously, like Trump, Harris. They're all over the news. But we're talking about like local elections, right? Not only Congress and Senate, but Board of Ed. We're talking about your mayor, city council, things like that. Your selectmen, depending on where you live. You need to pay attention, because they're the ones that are ruining everything at the ground level. Your locals, your local politicians. And don't be that person that goes in and just votes down column, because sometimes it backfires. So know what you're voting for, because sometimes you'd be amazed who you want to vote for. I mean, I freely admit, I am registered Republican, so I can vote in my primaries. But when I was active duty, I still voted for Joe Lieberman. Don't beat me up in the comments. I voted for Lieberman because I may not agree with all of his policies. I didn't agree with the vast majority of his policies, but I knew what I was getting. He always shot straight. He was fairly honest. He told you not what you wanted to hear, but what you needed to hear. And when I was dealing with Chris Murphy was my best friend. And this is during the time when the military was trying to shaft me out of benefits. They were doing it to a lot of people. But this Chris Murphy was up for election. It's the first time he was being elected to the Senate. I was his best friend. Then he got elected. No more phone calls, no more emails, nothing. Totally got ghosted by the guy. And I was a little upset for a long time. We're talking like a month. And then I was at a function, and I was Lions Club function, and it was to help veterans and all that. And I was just chatting with some older gentleman who was there also volunteering, and somehow we got talking about this. I'm not sure how. I think we're just talking about benefits, and I just like lost my collective poo on him, and I was like, and I explained what happened. I just lost it. And he kept it cool and collected. He was like, well, that's interesting. That's really interesting. I'm sorry to hear that. I was like, yeah. I was like, Chris Murphy's a POS. He just ghosted me. And about a couple of days later, I get a phone call on my cell phone. Because by the end of the day, this older gentleman asked for my contact number and all that. And I said, here's my phone number, whatever. So I get a phone call. I knew exactly whose voice it was, very distinct. It was Joe Lieberman. I was talking with his chief of staff. Didn't even know it. And he, in his accent, wow, I heard you had some problems. I'm sure that's horrible. And I said, yes, sir. And I explained everything. He's like, hold on. He goes, I'll call you back. Called me back 20 minutes, half hour later. And he goes, I made a few phone calls. Shall be taken care of. And it was. He got nothing out of it. He was just helping a constituent. But he didn't like the way the military was the Navy in particular, was really shafting everybody. Fast forward years later, it turns out during this whole time frame, the DoD as a whole was just shafting everybody. People were going overseas, getting hurt, and then when you're getting med boarded, like DC med board, the whole nine, lawyers and doctors and all that, they were lowballing all the percentages and pushing us out of the military without our retirement. It was horrible. They got called out. They got caught. There was a big thing about it, and they retroactively had to go back and fix everything. So, I have a personal beef against Murphy, and now you know why. All right, there's a lot of curses, no incentives. Yes. Tech and pharma. Yep, those are the problems. Tech and pharma are the awe. Listen, I never was a big fan of Twitter because, well, it's Twitter. It's just like a bastion of cesspool. It was horrible. And then Musk bought it, and it just became the free speech site. There are lots of stuff on there, lots of bad stuff, lots of good stuff. So I've gone into a little more. Obviously, you can find me everywhere, pretty much at Gun Guru Actual. And everyone, I'm on Facebook a lot. Maybe it's my age group. I don't do Snapchat, Instagram, but across the board, all the social media, they're going to be the same. I post something one place, it cascades throughout, including Truth Social, and down in the bio for the channel, you'll see all of the links for all of that. So, any word yet on HB 6667's registry compliance rate within the state? No. There literally is nothing on that. There is no word on when certificates are going to come out. There is no word if they're processing them currently, what they're doing with all the information. And they're not answering. They're not like giving anybody answers. And when they're like, we're working on it. We're working on it. I'm like, okay. So when it comes to the compliance, I have no idea. They probably don't either. Just because there's a massive backlog of DPS-3s at the time. There were like 3 to 4 years just sitting in boxes. I ran into that problem because one of mine, my Delta level defense, was not in the system, and I had to literally put it in the system. Thank God. I literally have my DPS-3s in front of me because I hold on to those like they're gold, right? All that paperwork. You got to hold on to it. Even if you sell a gun, you get rid of it. Keep the original where you bought it, and keep the DPS-3 where you sold it, because you never know where that gun's going, who's going to buy it, and what they're going to do with it. Because someday down the road, it might show up at a crime scene, and then the ATF is going to call and do a trace on it at the FFL, and they're going to go through, and they're going to, because this is how it works. When the ATF does a trace, because I've done these before, and I've talked about them. The way it's supposed to work is if the gun store is still in business, the gun store has all their 4473s. Gun shows up at a crime scene. ATF is like, yep, there's a gun. Okay, it's a Ruger, whatever it is, serial number this. So they call Ruger. And they're like, hey, Ruger, I need to know what happened to this gun. Okay, boom. Ruger says, hey, we took that gun and we shipped it to, say, Camphors. Then they call Camphors. Camphors, you got this gun, this serial number, where did it go? And they're like, oh, we sold it to blankety blank FFL in Connecticut. Then the ATF goes, okay, blankety blank FFL in Connecticut, here's what we're looking for, this time frame, hunt it down. I mean, that is an oversimplification of the whole thing. So you go through the records, you find the 4473, and one of the times that we did this, went through the 4473, and it was one of my friends. I was like, oh, snap. I was like, this is not going to bode well for them. And I was like, well, nothing I can do. Call the ATF back, give them all the information they want. And I couldn't just call up my buddy and be like, hey, man, ATF just did a trace on you. And, you know, did you lose a gun or whatever? But in a roundabout way, I was talking to him and I was like, hey, do you save all your DPS-3s when you buy and sell? He's like, of course. I was like, you might want to have them on hand. Just saying. Turns out, he had sold the gun 5 years prior to the gun store in Waterbury. So when they went knock, 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 they called them. And they're like, hey, where's this gun? He's like, I've got a DPS-3 right here. It says, this is what it is. I sold it to this store this day, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, cool, good to go. And then they call the gun store. And they're like, yeah, we bought that gun. Okay, now who did you sell it to? There you go. And that's how the trace works. Okay? But, old boy that takes a crack at Trump, they tracked that gun down in a half hour. Out of 1 billion pieces of paper. They digitize some, but again, they pay Adobe extra to remove the search function. That's what they say. They're full of it. They are absolutely full of it. All right. Just taking a look and see if any more chats have come in. Nothing else. Nobody else needs ask any more questions. Works for me. We'll call it quits early. Just refreshing it. All right. Well, nothing else is going on. Nobody else has questions. As I have an ad pop up, I think I will just call it a night then. We'll call it early. I did teach all day. I am tired, and I have to get up early and go teach again tomorrow. I'm not complaining. I love teaching. It literally is one of my favorite things to do, is teach all these new people all about gun safety and then take them for their first live fire. I always prefer those that have never handled a firearm, even though I joke that I'm scared, I'm going to pray. I prefer when they have never touched a gun because they're going to listen. No bad habits. Those that have been doing it for years, they know what they're doing. They know more than you. They're the ones that screw up. They're the ones that are filled with bad habits. I've always had problems with those types of students. I literally watched one put a round through the ceiling. Like right up. Not like hitting the ceiling that way, but that way. And that's about the only time that I really lost my cool on a student. Like, really went off. So, all right, we'll call it a night. I hope all of you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Look forward to going to goals. So you guys stay tuned for some sweet material coming out of there. If for some reason you guys want to see anything in particular while I'm there, have any questions or anything, you can always shoot me an email or throw it in the comment section and I'll find it. All right, that's all I got for you guys. You enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will talk to you all later.